Hi, today we are going to be lining the interior trays of the drop spine box. This is the first inner tray, and I have attached the paper lining which wraps around to the bottom side. This is the unlined tray. So I'm going to start with a piece of Dove Gray end sheet paper, and I cut it so that it's about 1/8 of an inch shorter than the height of the box, and then I make it so that it hangs over about 1/2 an inch to an inch beyond the lip so it can be wrapped around. And I put it face down on my waste paper sheet, and I use something that I've mixed up myself. It's a slow PVA, which is 50% methyl cellulose and 50% PVA. This slows the drying time of the glue, and especially when you're making a larger box, it's a lot nicer to have this slow drying glue. It gives you time to brush out your liner sheet, and also gives you time to position it and slide it into place a little bit before it starts to dry. So once again, I'm brushing from the center out, and I brush the whole thing. Because it's slow drying, I can brush the entire piece, including that bit that wraps around to the back. Since this is the bottom of the tray that'll be glued down, I'm not really worrying about putting it down into my gluey waste sheet. So I lay this in so that the borders are even on the sides and along the vertical part of the tray. Usually about 1/16 of an inch. The paper does expand, so it might be even closer to the wall. And I burnish the whole thing down. And then I make my crease along the edge, and I wrap that around, pulling it tight as I do it. And then I just want to burnish, burnish, burnish with my Teflon folder. I usually put a tiny little crease along the edge of the book cloth because I prefer to see the line than to have a little bubble there where the paper hasn't adhered. And as I said in my last video, I want to line the tray, and before it gets a chance to dry, I want to assemble my drop spine box. Now I take the cover that we've made in the last video, and I lay it down. I've gotten rid of my waste sheet of paper, and I'm going to glue up the bottoms of the trays. I'm using a straight PVA now, because we're going to work fairly quickly. And I don't need the waste sheet because I'm just going to start in the center and brush right off the edge of my tray. And I apply the glue pretty liberally. And when I'm finished gluing the whole thing, I go back and I make sure that the glue on all the edges is wet and not so thick that it's going to squeeze out of the seam and get messy, but thick enough where I get a nice bond. Because that is the part, especially on the four corners, that's the part that you really want to stick. That's the part that sometimes doesn't want to stick very well. And then I'm just going to put a little extra because it's not going to squeeze out. I'm just going to put a little extra in the middle just to make sure that there's contact on the whole surface. Then I lay my tray down. I line it up with the edge of my groove. And this is the inner tray, the smaller of the two. So it will actually line up exactly with my spine lining sheet of book cloth. And you should check to make sure that all three borders are the same size. And then put lots and lots of weight into the box. I'm just going to pile it up. Now these marble squares are actually they're old bases for trophies. And then these I found these on Amazon. They're 500-gram weights. And they are very useful. Now sometimes I even I have an old iron, the cast iron that you'd have to heat up, and I take that and I lay the iron in here. So then we want to glue up the second tray. And again, I will line this up with the edge of the groove, and there'll be about an 1/8 inch showing around the edge on the three sides. That's called the square, that little bit that shows on a book or on a box, that's called the square. And then I'll pile it up with plenty of weight. And we're finished. Just leave this under weight for at least an hour, longer if you can, and then I usually like to let it dry for a good 24 hours. If you want to be absolutely sure that the PVA has off-gassed, I'd say 2 weeks. Just leave it open and out for 2 weeks until it's thoroughly dry and off-gassed, and then you can put your book or your art object inside, and I don't think you need to worry about it. Thank you.